students from 6 through 12. Did I hear that correctly?
The
Each student from grade level 6 through 12 would get a laptop?
Well, we're a little ahead, but what we're looking at is what it would look like. And again, we're presenting the piece to cabinet tomorrow within the intention to bring it to the board. So a one-to-one environment would look more like K through 4 would be clusters within the classroom of probably 6 computers. We get to 4 or 5 will be probably classroom sets. We need to make sure in the buildings that we have enough capacity for our assessment windows and our load for FastBridge, KELPA, and state assessments or CAP. And then when we get to 6 through 8, it would be a one-to-one in the classroom, but not a checkout. And these are preliminary. I just want to say that I'm giving you a tentative proposal, which will come to you. High school then would be one-to-one and would be a checkout process.
Okay, so, and then maybe I was a little confused. So I was thinking that we would be using these just if we ran into a scenario where so this is going to supplement curriculum and instruction.
Correct.
And all those kinds of
Correct.
different things.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I know we're not really discussing this, but, and I'm not opposed, and obviously you guys are putting some stuff together to bring back, but I'm still a little gun shy from the iPad purchases and the amount of money that we sunk in to that.
If I could, and I know we're early, so I want to be careful with this, but the committee, when we had the computer science work group committee that met this past year, it was very apparent as I was doing my background digging is that when the iPads were rolled out, the intention was that it would replace print materials. And so I think it was kind of left up to, here's your device, it's open source, go find it. And that kind of led to people going out and finding things on their own or collaboratively or in professional organizations. In and of itself, there isn't necessarily something wrong with that, but then what happens is we cannot guarantee what our students are receiving. So what we're looking at, and I want to also say what I said when we were talking about the materials, the actual print materials. These are tools. So our students need to be technologically proficient and literate in a 21st century work environment. But what is that going to look like? The iPads itself, we found some gaps through that work group that not having a Microsoft Office platform, and that's the current dominant industry use for Office mechanisms or uses. But will that change in the future to maybe a Google platform? I don't know, but our kids really are not being taught that right now. They're also not keyboards with the iPads, and there could have been more planning in the professional development and integration into the curriculum planning as far as how you use these with different tools. So I'm just telling you what was reported through the work group committee. When we look at devices, and we do need devices, when we look at devices, how do we use it to best support the student learning and the teacher's ability to teach? Those things go hand in hand. And so there will be a purposeful plan on what type of device. Keyboarding is another one that came up through this committee, saying we need keyboarding. With the iPads, we currently don't have that unless we buy an accessory with the keyboard. So there are a lot of different things. We'll talk about apps, whether it be student or teacher apps, and what we do, because that's something that Ray and his department spend a lot of time trying to manage. Apps are important, but also we can really go different directions with apps that if it's not vetted or aligned, would not be a good thing.
Can we block Netflix? That's all I ask.
Amazon, Netflix, those types of things. Yeah, that does not happen. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, whether it's a instructor or textbooks or technology that can help increase educational outcomes. I'm speaking for me personally. Obviously, I would be for that, but we kind of jumped into that iPad thing, sunk a bunch of money in it, and I still don't know what measurable outcomes we got from that, if any.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't want to do that again.
We agree.
Yeah.
Well, the keyboarding is absolutely essential.
Yeah, and that's a measurable
I mean,
outcome.
it's
Yeah, that's something.
my 5 years at Service Tech taught me
No.
that
It was a very dominant theme, probably unanimous across the work group committee. So.
right.
So let me ask a question about, are they going to have cases for protection? So they're not broken?
That is a question I'll have to defer to Ray on, because I know part of what he budgets in his annual, probably general fund supply line item is replacements. And so we want to minimize that. We know we're going to have replacement amounts. So I don't know those numbers. Ray would manage those. But, you know, each devices are getting better because the school market is a huge market, but they're still subject to being lost and broken and destroyed. So whether or not there's cases, I know that's part of what, I'm sure with the state bid list, which is what Ray is more than likely going to go through to price these, that there'll be things that will be the lowest responsible bidder. And so that would be a factor we'd look at.
Yeah, we're not being very fair to Dr. Springston because he's not prepared.
He's not
He's
presenting
he's
tonight.
fielding
Yeah,
questions that.
Not a
because
problem at
They still
all.
got to go to cabinet and go through that process, so.
We just had our cabinet meeting.
Yeah, but I do want to tie this together because it does all tie in. There is no question, Ryan's comment, I've heard many of the board talk to me about that before, and we're definitely trying to do it different. But because of the situation that the entire world is in, things are changing, and they're changing rapidly, and there are things that we're going to have to be ready for. And technology is one of the aspects that we're going to have to learn to use in a bigger and bolder way. And totally agree that some things that we didn't work out the way we want them to, but we can't stop trying to make things work out, because as I pointed out, when we go to the quarantine situation that will happen, we cannot just expect that child to go home for 10 days and not replace it with some kind of learning. And there are many different methods, there are many different ways. And I think I choked him up quite a bit. I see he left the room, but it's got to fit in the budget. It's got to fit in the budget. And I do know that part of what we've set aside and the board has kind of assigned is that a certain amount of our money in capital outlay is supposed to go to technology each year. And we've tried to address that appropriately. And I also know that we have received one-time money with the COVID CARES Act. There is money there, and this directly relates to being able to spend some of that money towards the purchase of more technology to reach more of our kids so that we can respond to COVID outbreaks. So it all ties in, and so there are some funding mechanisms in place that will help us get through that. I don't think we're ready to send every kid home with a case and a laptop. I never meant to insinuate that, but I do want us to realize that we are going to have to make an investment in technology, and it's to help us with the scenarios that we've yet to see.
I don't, and the great thing now is we're far enough along in the country where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's other districts that have done other things and done the same thing we did. And I appreciate Dr. Springston talking about picking up things from, listening to the Zoom meeting. And I mean, we really don't have to, we have to tailor it to our district, but there are districts that have done things that have worked and districts that have done things that hadn't worked. And we don't have to invent the wheel.
Yeah, and I do believe that connectivity is going to be the key, and I do believe that problem goes way beyond just Dodge City itself. I think that's a state and national issue that's going to have to be addressed, and that gets in the way of equity until we do. So, all that to say, this is what we're putting together, and we're moving toward this. Just for your information, Great Bend today indicated that they had all their employees come back on June 1st, Garden City, June 15th. And so we're in succession with similar aspects, so.
What is the, any fair labor COVID guidance if someone's over the age of 65 or they have underlying condition? What does that affect on their vacation and sick and
That's
any
a
type
good
of
point,
leave?
and Ramona probably is more up to date on that than I am, and I see her smiling at me, like, don't you dare ask me to answer that question. But, go ahead.
Restate your question, please.
Basically, what is the current regulations if someone feels they're at risk to come back to the office?
So if they feel like, so at this time, we honor that feeling that they have, that they would be putting themselves at risk, and allow them to stay home, but there's no COVID pay for that. It is personal leave, sick leave, accrued leave, those kinds of things. We haven't really run into that. We've not had any come to us and say that. So are you aware of something out there that you're thinking that we might need to be considering?
I probably when more staff come back when school starts, I mean, if we have, is there any, like if they can perform their job from home, can they do it based on a personal risk? Because at one point, time will quickly run out and we will lose employees pretty quick just because of their underlying health.
Well, I do
Conditions.
think it will have to be a case-by-case basis. We know that we have some right now in pretty precarious health situations, and obviously, we don't want to do something that would put them at greater risk by just requiring them to come in. I mean, Dr. Dirksen and I have spoken about one in particular that we have some great concerns about bringing that person back around the masses. So we're working through that. So again, it would be kind of case by case, and we want to be sensitive to that, yet we also need to make it fair, you know, to all employees, and so it will just be something that we have to deal with as it arises.
You talk about getting ideas from other districts, and one district that in the Zoom that I'm on twice a week with schools our size, one district in Kansas is asking teachers that fit that scenario to be their virtual instructor for grades 1, grade 2, grade 3, all the way through, because they think they're going to have that many that bring that situation to them. It may not have been their original assignment, but it's going to be how they can continue to be on contract, because unlike our situation, many of those districts that I meet with have received letters, emails, and communications that parents are not going to bring their child back to school until there's a vaccine or things are better. And to this day, I've yet to receive one. And as I've told you before, the most frequent question I get is, please tell me we're starting school.
Yeah.
That's all that I've seen so far. But there will be employees that fit in that category, and we are going to have to be prepared. Hammer and I listened to the other Zoom that is from KSDE, and it's once a week now. It was every day there for a while. But the guidance that we're getting there is they sign a contract to work. They sign a contract to work on site and at the place. And if they can't fulfill that, then you get another contract. And that's really what they've been telling us. And so we'll handle it. We've had scenarios that we've dealt with, and if they can meet the responsibilities of their job, we've definitely worked with them. And that was before COVID even, just so you know. We are just trying to make things work, and in the new world of technology, there are things that you can do different, so. Okay. I think it's a great conversation. I think this is very important. I apologize to Scott for putting him on the spot like that, but you guys got to understand, you're very involved in this conversation too, and this is the world we're in now, and things are changing, and there is nothing to say that we don't learn something new for the next board meeting that changes everything we just talked about on bringing employees back to work or how we start school. I mean, that's the environment we're in right now, and we're trying to be as steady as we can be with a solid plan and admit that we're ready to change if that's what needs to happen. So I appreciate your time.
All right, we are ready then for Board of Education member district responsibilities. Park and Rec, if you met, please.
They met, but I had a work commitment and I had to miss the meeting. Sorry.
Right, beginnings get started.
We'll probably be done till September, I imagine.
Special ed is in the building. And the new director reports July 1st. She'll probably be here the week before, spending some time. We're in the middle of negotiations, as all school districts are. But the move has been fairly smooth with a few hiccups. But I think that for the most part, employees are delighted, except the ones that live in need. They're delighted to be here in the building, and it's just nice. I look forward to Trina being a part of the cabinet, and just a greater working relationship with the districts in 613.
I do have a quick shout out though to Bright Beginnings. Each of the policy council members, they gave a gift to, one of those things was a pull-apart light. The storm last night, my lights went out in the house. And it worked, it was great, I kid you not, it was wonderful, pulled it out, so, thank you. Yes.
Legislative, I mean, we could,
I would yield to one of our, people in the audience.
Yeah.
Ralph.
an expert in the house.
Yeah, we have an expert in-house, and I would yield my time to.
What have you
Ralph.
done for us lately?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, and you don't very often get asked to actually step to the microphone, so I guess I will at this point, but I know you've had a long meeting, covered a lot of stuff tonight, so I won't take your time, but I will tell you, hopefully, we appeared to finish our session better than we had our hiccup of trying to finish our session, so we got to a little better end right there at the finish. Obviously, we're all very concerned at this point in regard to revenues and such as we move forward, but I think the atmosphere and the sense of folks up there is a little better right now, but we're also on edge, just as you all are in the discussions you've had tonight about being able to pivot and react to situations that we're not quite sure what next week's gonna bring or the month after that. So we're hoping that people keep an open mind about actually being ready to deal with the circumstances that were provided as opposed to being locked into a presupposed way that we need to deal with things. So hopefully we're on that path, and I hope I'm not being overly Pollyannish or naive again as we go along. But I do think that's got a real possibility, and the only thing that I will say right now is we're losing Don Heineman from over in our neighboring county, not coming back, not running for re-election. So it's important for us to continue in the rural areas to try and maintain some continuity up there, because our voices are getting tougher and tougher to bring in from the rural areas. So we're hopeful to be able to continue that. But be glad to answer any questions, but I know you're at the end of your meeting. I'd be glad to come back at another moment or another time, give 10, 15 minutes of some presentation in regard to some of the things that happened. The last pieces of legislation, that package of COVID information or legislation, was a lot of stuff going on in one particular bill, and so be more than happy, or to, address questions individually for folks at any point you want to, so leave it for that, but thank you for the opportunity.
thanks, Brad, appreciate it. Capital outlay, we kind of already have had a conversation about that. Have you guys, you haven't met? No. Calendar committee, I assume you haven't met yet. We've got, Jeff, you're scheduled to review the bills before July's meeting. And that is our only announcement, that we have a board meeting Monday, July 13th. That will be our only board meeting for the month of July. It's here at 6 o'clock. Do we have any items for future board meetings? We might need a special meeting. And that would be just a short, probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe, so. Okay, any other items?
No, I just want to say, I really appreciate the transparency that was decided with the Bright Beginnings classroom exposure. I think going forward, the community's gonna expect us to be transparent, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, very good.
That ties in with exactly what we talked about, and our communication department does an outstanding job, and they have a plan, and every time we have a need for a response, that's gonna be part of our plan, because there is nothing to hide. We care about the safety of our kids, and we're doing everything we can to be as safe as we possibly can, so letting people know is a part of it.
Very good. Anything else? Going once, going twice. We don't have a need for executive session, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Tammy, second by Ryan. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you, everybody.